Start the meeting until everyone is seated in its spot. Those seats are not counted as seats because they're for the presenters, so therefore you can't sit in those seats either. I'm sorry.
Are you talking about me? Are you talking about these
Yes,
spots?
yes.
So as a parent, I can't come to this meeting?
You're welcome to come to the meeting, but obviously there's not a seat, there's extra seating out in the cafeteria. Someone could get up and give you their
Is it being broadcast
seat.
in the cafeteria then for us?
Yes,
It's being broadcast.
Okay, but I can't
Has
be
the
here.
meeting officially started?
not yet.
Then I think you should start the meeting to request that.
I can't start the meeting until we have compliance with the fire code.
Okay, I'll leave.
Is that true?
There's one here. We have one here.
Do we have? Is there,
Josh, take my seat.
is there literature that says that? Is that past precedent? Is that, has the fire marshal determined that these seats don't really exist in terms of the fire code?
He was here this afternoon, and yes,
And so these seats are invisible,
I'm sure they're not invisible, but they're not usable.
so no one will be sitting here this evening?
Presenters sitting in those spots, yes.
So,
This room has a capacity of 134 people.
okay. Plus these four when people come in from the cafeteria. Just want to make sure we're accounting correctly. It's been a problem in the past.
Thank you.
Sounds like Mavison. Oh, jeez.
If you wanted to give parents a really bad show, you just did it.
We're waiting for Andy. Can you either take a seat or? Please, you count as a person. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the September 12th school board meeting. All board members are in attendance. Would you please stand, remove your hats, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Someone like to move approval of the agenda?
So moved?
Second, thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Brings us to our recognition of students, staff, and public. Brings us to the recognition of students, staff, and public. First is a proclamation regarding Hispanic Latino Heritage Month. Someone like to make the resolution?
Madam Chair, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the attached proclamation proclaiming September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Latino Heritage Month in the Bloomington Public Schools.
Thank you. Andy Kubas is here to give us some background, and then I will read the proclamation.
School board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, viewing public, people are with us here tonight. Really excited about this movement for the Hispanic Latino Heritage Month proclamation. This is the first time that we've recognized this group of people in our community who are hugely contributing to what we do. They wish that they could be here tonight. The Latino Parent Association wanted to be here tonight. They couldn't make it. They sent a letter that said that we are grateful for the invitation. Unfortunately, we will not have representation tonight. It's early in the school year, and our families are still getting used to new routines, but they look forward to coming back. They're really excited about the changes we've made around family engagement. In fact, they say, we're excited about experiencing the new strategies of community building that Learning Supports and the Office of Educational Equity are implementing. So we're excited about building that relationship and giving all of our families a voice in what happens in our schools. I'd say, in closing, I think this is a great first step. Where we'll get complete awareness is when we will certainly recognize things like this, but when we talk about our Latino people who are pioneers, we just don't talk about them during this month, but we talk about them all the time because of the things that they did for our entire community. So we're excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I'll read the proclamation now. Whereas the history of people of Hispanic Latino heritage goes back thousands of years and includes some of the greatest, most advanced, and innovative societies in the history of human existence. And whereas Hispanic Latino Americans have played a significant role in the history of the state of Minnesota, from the early days of the pioneers to our present-day leaders in education, agriculture, government, the arts, finance, and international trade. And whereas Hispanic Latino American Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the rich history and teaching of the Hispanic Latino Americans and bear witness to the progress, beauty, and achievement they have made throughout our region. Whereas in 1968, Hispanic History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of Hispanic Latino history throughout our American experience, and whereas the history of Hispanic Latino Americans and that of Americans from all the world's cultures is reflected in the curriculum, learning materials, activities, and celebrations throughout the year in Bloomington Public Schools. Now, therefore, we, the Bloomington School Board, hereby proclaim the month marked by the date September 15th, 2016 through October 15, 2016, to be Hispanic Latino Heritage Month in the Bloomington School District. We encourage all staff, students, families, and residents to join in celebrating the collective ingenuity, creativity, cultures, and traditions of Hispanic Latinos, and to continue honoring the contributions of Latino Americans throughout the year.
Thank you.
Oh, let's vote first. All in favor of this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? None. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to introduce the new administrators for Valley View Middle School. Megan Wilrett, interim principal, and Ashley Boudreau, interim assistant principal. And I'd like to call upon Eric Melby, the assistant superintendent, to introduce them.
Thank you, Chair Bartolotta, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, for the crowd here tonight and for the viewing public. I take the distinct pleasure in introducing you to new administration team over at Valley View Middle School. I'm going to start with Megan Wilrett, who's the interim principal for this year at Valley View Middle School. Tell you a little bit about Megan. Before coming to Bloomington Public Schools in 2007, she taught elementary school and was an elementary school counselor at Sojourner Truth Academy in North Minneapolis. In 2007, she was hired at Kennedy High School as a counselor. Started working towards administrative licensure, was hired as a dean of students for the 13-14 and 14-15 school years, and then in the fall of 2015, last year, hired as the assistant principal at Valley View Middle School. Megan lives in Savage with her husband, Rob, and 3 children, Maria, who is 12 and in 7th grade, Carmen, who is 10 and in 4th grade, and Benji, who is 9 and in 3rd grade. Nice span there. So I'd like to welcome Megan and thank her, really, for doing the interim principal role for us this year at Valley View Middle School, and ask her to say a couple of words to the board and public.
Sure. Thank you, board, for having me tonight. I am truly honored to be able to step up in the role of principal at Valley View. I can say it's an exciting endeavor, but it wasn't an endeavor I wasn't willing to take on without my partner in crime here, Ashley Boudreau. I must say, though, and I have an audience here to hear it, I work with an incredible staff at Valley View. I worked with an incredible staff at Kennedy, and our jobs wouldn't be possible without them. They make us look good here in Bloomington schools. So I guess that's where I'm most excited is I have such great support at Valley View, whether it be the families, whether it be the teachers, the parents, or other administrators that have offered support. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to lead Valley View this year.
And next, I'd like to introduce you to Ashley Boudreau, who's the interim assistant principal at Valley View Middle, since Megan is the interim principal at Valley View Middle School. Prior to this year for Ashley, she was fortunate enough, in her words, to experience a variety of roles in Bloomington Public Schools. From 2004 to 2012, she worked at Oak Grove Middle School as a 6th grade social studies teacher, a 6th grade math teacher, and as a dean of students. Then in 2012, Ashley was hired as a QComp peer coach, and over the past 4 years has had the pleasure and honor to work with and support faculty at multiple elementary and secondary schools in Bloomington schools, including Valley View Middle School. Ashley lives in Minnetonka with her husband David and 2 children, Will, who is 6 and in 1st grade, and Nora, who is 3 and just beginning adventures as a preschooler. That's exciting. So anyway, I again take the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Ashley Boudreau, and I'd ask her to say a couple of words.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Megan said, I'm going to be echoing a lot of what she has already mentioned, but I am very excited about this opportunity to serve as the interim assistant principal at Valley View Middle School. As Eric mentioned, for the past 2 years, I've been fortunate to be at Valley View Middle School as a peer coach and working with the teachers. Supporting them and learning from them on a daily basis has been such an exciting opportunity. And now this year in the new role, I'm really looking forward to continuing that work and building upon those relationships that we've already begun to establish. But the other piece that is so exciting to me is to also have that opportunity to work with and support the students and our families at Valley View. So thank you very much for the opportunity. As Megan said, we are surrounded by an amazing team of teachers and wonderful students, so we're looking forward to a great year ahead. Thanks.
Thank you. Before we begin our public comment, are there any students in the audience that are here for a class? We usually invite the students to step over to the podium and announce their name and their school and their teacher. So would you please file forward? Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm Evan Johnson from Jefferson High School, and my teacher is Mr. Storleen.
Thank you.
Josiah Cage, Jefferson High School. My teacher is Mr. Carlson.
I'm Andy Swartz in Jefferson High School. My teacher is Mr. Carlson.
Heidi Kraus, Jefferson High School, and Mr. Carlson.
I'm Caroline Harkner. I'm at Jefferson, and my teacher is Mr. Storleen.
Ryan Gottsleben, Jefferson High School, and Mr. Storleen.
Jordan Watts, Jefferson High School, and my teacher is Mr. Carlson.
Sam Purtle, Jefferson High School. My teacher is Miss Abby.
Danielle Peterson, Jefferson High School. My teacher is Mr. Storleen.
Jefferson High School, Miss Abby Kierstead.
Matthew Steigoff, Jefferson High School, Miss Abby.
Blake Leanne, Jefferson High School, Mr. Storleen.
Kristen Chardon, Jefferson High School, Mr. Storlene.
Haley Dickinson, Jefferson High School, Miss Abby.
Quinn Hoopmacher, Jefferson High School, and Mr. Carlson.
Sophie Gleason, Jefferson High School, Miss Abby.
Max Stenbeck, Jefferson High School, Mr. Carlson.
Jocelyn Jaimes, Jefferson High School, Miss Abby.
Kevin Keeley, Jefferson High School, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. We ask that you stay for 1 hour, and at that time, someone on the cabinet side of the room will sign your agenda to show Mr. Storlene or Miss Abby or Mr. Carlson that you were here.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Yes.
Just quickly, you can stay longer than 1 hour. If you want to stay for everything, you're certainly welcome to, but I know you all have studying to do, and you don't want to disappoint your teachers.
Yeah. So thank you again for your attendance. All right, we've reached the point in tonight's agenda for public comment. The school board values public input, and it is our responsibility to actively listen and reflect on your comments. The board will not respond to individual comments or questions during public comment, but reserve the right to seek clarification from members of the district team on statements presented during the public comment. We've been notified that there are people who wish to address the school board on the topic of labor negotiations, and as in the past, we've set aside 20 minutes for the public comment. To help facilitate this 20-minute time limit, however, we ask that the people that are going to speak maybe line up so that it moves a little faster. And we ask the individual speakers to please limit your comments to allow for others to offer their comment on the same issue. Recognition to address the board is done at the discretion of the chair, and individuals offering public comment are not permitted to make personal attacks on any district employees, board members, or members of the public. So doing that, is someone like to speak to the board? Your time is going.
Superintendent Fujitaki, Madam Chair, Board, Cabinet members, you all know me by now. I've spoke a couple times. Julie Morse. I have a child in Kennedy. I had a very long speech planned, and I decided you've heard it all. I've been here speaking twice before. You've heard what I have to say. Many of you have been on Facebook and seen what I am posting. So in light of that, what I will say instead is, well, after what just happened here, I highly suggest, because the meetings are not going to get smaller until this is done, and more public is coming, perhaps someone can look into using the city council chambers, which allows for a lot more people and also allows for filming by the same organization that films these meetings. Just a suggestion there. I had many notes and now. I also highly suggest that a little extra time is given. I realize there's 20 minutes allotted. I also know that that can be extended in case other people need to come and speak. Now on that, this is for the school board members. Many of us voted for you, and before voting we researched. I know I did. And everyone I voted for last round made it in. So many of you got my votes. I researched and voted based on how I thought you would run the district, how you would vote, and it's not happening. We're losing too many good teachers. I have seen what's been put out on the website about how the teachers we have lost this past year are on par with state average. Do we really want to be average? Bloomington used to be the place to come teach. Bloomington used to be the place that was hard to get a teaching job at because people didn't leave until they retired out. That's not happening anymore. To be on par with state average with the number of teachers we're losing, and they are our seasoned teachers. There are teachers that know the Bloomington kids, know the Bloomington residents, know Bloomington period, know you guys, know how it works. And we're losing them. Do we really want to be known as the district that's training the new teachers in for them to leave in a year or two? That's what's going to happen. And that's what the talk is. So I urge you to take this into consideration when negotiating, when looking to how you're going to vote. Take into consideration how we voted for you. Many people that voted for school board members, and I'm one of them, did not know that you have a cabinet that does research. And I understand the time you have, everybody's got a life. You can't research everything, and I understand having a cabinet. But please don't allow them to be the only thing that determines their research, determines how you vote. Look to your hearts, look to why you originally ran for school board. And I remind you that Superintendent Fujitaki and the cabinet are employees of yours. You are not employees of them. Do not allow them to bully you. Do not allow them to sway your vote. Go back to the reason why you ran for school board. We can't afford to keep losing our teachers. We cannot afford to go into strike. And we cannot afford the bad reputation that Bloomington is getting throughout the whole state as a school district. Many of us live in this city. Our property values are going to go down. That means less kids coming into this state, into this school district. That means less state funding. It's spiraling, and it's going to keep going that way. I have been myself on several boards. I've been president of a board. Some of them strictly followed Robert's Rules of Orders. Some were more casual. I realize how it works. That's why I ask that you, because I realize that you can extend out the 20 minutes. As I said, please consider you are the employers, the school board. And don't allow others to lead you to believe otherwise. Sorry, I've lost my place on my notes here. I have also heard, and I'm probably wording this wrong, and I apologize, about the Q-comp obligations. That a few years back, and a lot of the residents don't know this is why I'm speaking this here. I know you guys obviously know that there was Q-comp obligations, and that the teachers voted and agreed for a 400 per person compensation that would be, in essence, given back. I realize that's not the exact wording, but they were supposed to get $2,000 over a certain period of time. They agreed to $1,600. So they've already taken in a decrease in pay. They're not asking for a lot now. I also know that the state has given every school district in the state a 2% increase over the last 2 years. And most of those school districts have used that to give their teachers the raises they've been asking for. I ask that we give that 2% back to our teachers. They already gave to us when times were tough. I ask that they give back to us. And if that can't be done, then I want to know what is happening with our money. Why is it they gave back money to help out, and now we're in a worse situation, allegedly? That's all I have to say.
Hello, Chair Bartolotta, school board members, cabinet, listening audience. You've heard me before, so I'm going to keep it really short and sweet. For the school board, the BFT and the district have had over 1 year of bargaining sessions. The BFT is very interested in a fair, equitable contract. We are asking for only reasonable recognition for our work. We need to settle this contract. And for the teachers and our supporters in the audience, I know that you are working hard and doing good work. You come and you bring your best to students every day in spite of the tough atmosphere we are in. We feel beat down by our very own school district and unappreciated for the work we are doing. Our voices as educators have been tuned out by the district, and we are talked about as if we are a burdensome cost. Well, we are not a cost. We are an investment, just like our students are an investment. I know many teachers are looking at other districts to see how they treat their teachers. I want to thank those that stuck around this year and didn't go to other districts, and I'm grateful. And you can give me all the data you want in saying teachers aren't leaving our district, but those people out there, they know they're leaving. They see them. So we're not just fighting for a fair contract. We're fighting for the direction of our school district and to get back to putting students first and revenue second. Thank you.
Come on over, honey. Hi, my name is Rebecca Northup. I've got a second grader at Hillcrest, and I've got my fifth grader here as well. Sorry to do this to you. Thank you. I didn't formally prepare a statement, but I did want to just come in, of course, to show my appreciation for the BFT and my support. And also just to, let you know, just as a parent and a community member, the way that I've been affected. I'm also a supporter and a voter for a lot of the members who are up here today. And my husband and I have talked about switching school districts for our children into different cities because of the negative reaction or the negative repercussions that all of this unsettled contract is having on us. My kids are negatively affected. The stress about the teachers, the staff switch-ups has been giving them a feeling of uncertainty. And the low morale, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. The low morale of the teachers is also affecting my students' experience at school. So as a concerned parent, I'm looking elsewhere. My husband and I have seriously considered it, and a lot of our friends have had the same conversations with us. And they're all friends that we've had since ECFE and baby school and, the ECFE classes. And then we also live in a community where there is a lot of retired residents. And they, I figure that they don't really give, much of a care to this sort of situation here, but they've voiced to me their concern about their community and the property values going down because they're hearing such bad reputation, negative press regarding this. So even our retired residents and our neighbors around are dismayed about this whole situation. So I just hope that everything can reach a fair, quick resolve, and I want my teachers to be feeling appreciated and happy with their job and where they are. Thanks for listening.
Madam Chair, directors, and Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the viewing public, and the 134 of us that remain in the room. Protocol for this time of the meeting, where community members have the opportunity to address the board, is that the comments are directed at the entire school board. However, I feel that this board has become so ineffectual with respect to the topic of the evening, the unsettled contract, that I will defer and direct my comments to the superintendent because it is Mr. Fujitaki that has so skillfully controlled this board's procedures, thoughts, and actions. It would appear that he has convinced you that your role is to unanimously approve everything brought to you because, trust me, it's the right thing to do, or it's in the best interest of the district. You approve budgets without in-depth analysis, adopt policy because the administration and legal team from the MSBA think it is right, and you don't ever question or ask for discussion on camera because the public should only see how the sausage is made when they are present in this room only during your study sessions. Those sessions are not broadcast to the public because it would allegedly hinder board discussion. When was the last time a vote was taken by this board that was not unanimous in favor? When was the last time that a board member asked a question with some teeth or substance to it instead of lobbing softball inquiries for which you have already prepped the superintendent or administration for a quick reply? This board has essentially abdicated its responsibility for governance, and now you merely look like shills for the public relations department of the district. Your comments are all about choosing another public appearance to make, which sporting event or activity you can get into for free, and who had the most public appearances since the last meeting. I believe that some of you look at this position only as a stepping stone to your next political office. Therefore, I direct my comments to the superintendent. Mr. Fujitaki, I would like to take you on a short trip down memory lane. A little over a decade ago, the district administration and the BFT were engaged in a similar protracted negotiation process. You were a member of the district team, although your attendance was usually limited to those sessions where money was being discussed. We had been through many bargaining sessions. We were using the typical bargaining tactics like mediation. The BFT was implementing escalating levels of job actions, including work to rule. And suddenly we reached the point where we were on the verge of taking a strike authorization vote. Oh my, I guess the teachers are serious, you thought. And then you asked yourself, why are the teachers so angry? So you attended the next bargaining session, and lo and behold, you found out why. The district team was not accurately sharing all of the issues with the superintendent and board, and you acted quickly to bring the many concerns to light. Soon the stalemate in negotiations was over, and an equitable settlement was reached. Les was the anonymous backstage hero. After this successful settlement, your predecessor decided to look elsewhere for work, and a search was made for a new superintendent. You applied and actively sought support from the BFT and other labor unions, noting more than once in public forums that having a strong unionized labor force was important to the success of the Bloomington public schools. You were selected, and one of your first moves to demonstrate that you meant business was to hire as your personnel director our Education Minnesota field representative. You also had to do some fancy footwork to get your superintendent's license because you had no educational background, only finance. So you compensated for that vulnerability by keeping close a select group of competent advisors on educational matters. Things seemingly went well for a while as you could rely on the wise counsel of the people in your administration, those that understood what teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, and other support staff needed to be effective in their jobs. You and the BFT implemented things like the Issues Forum, where we had in-depth discussions about important topics to both teachers and the district. An example was creating and implementing a new teacher evaluation system long before it was mandated by the legislature. We also tackled thorny issues like how to manage rising healthcare costs through the Labor Management Committee, where all labor groups and administration had input and benefited from those discussions and informed decisions. However, your penchant for controlling the books never went away. Every 2 years at our initial bargaining meetings, we heard the same old stories of being on the brink of the abyss, that there were deficits ahead and we could not afford this and that, yada, yada, yada.
You know,
All the while,
Excuse me,
you
Mr.
were
Mapleson.
building up the rainy day fund
Mr.
to a
Mapleson.
point where legislators were telling you that the fund balance carried by the Bloomington schools were the topic of discussion in the state legislature.
Do no
Why
personal
should
attack.
schools go more funding when they have this much on the books? In response, you have craftily shifted the money into sub-accounts, spent down the general fund balance, and withered the storm of the lean years. Nobody ever criticized you for your skill with the dollar. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, you lost your trusted educational advisors, and you have surrounded yourself with a new cast of central administration that has grown while district resources have shrunk, allegedly due to enrollment declines. You or your new minions have developed and implemented multiple initiatives that drain away resources from the regular classroom and take time away from teachers. I won't discuss the hundreds of thousands of dollars wasted by poor personnel decisions within your cabinet, as those are covered by Data Practices Act restrictions. Enough said about that. Mr. Fujitaki, it is time now for you to become the leader that you chose to be that many years ago. It is time to find a solution to this contract mess that you have created with your "we are sitting on the precipice of financial ruin" mentality. Find the resources to give the teachers a fair settlement, like surrounding districts have been able to do, and move this district forward so that teachers can focus on teaching instead of fretting about implementing job actions. Demonstrate the resolve that you showed when you said that strong labor relations were important to the success of the Bloomington Public Schools. Bring your school board a resolution that they can unanimously support to settle this contract. After all, Mr. Fujitaki, the bucks stop with you.
Those who provided public comment and input tonight. To ensure all people here and viewing at home have a balance with respect to the information presented tonight, I invite members of the district negotiating team to join us at the table to respond to the school board members' questions. 20 minutes is up, I'm sorry. 7:16. Please go to the table.
I'll keep it short.
Please identify yourself.
My name's Jessica Madsen. I'm a Bloomington resident, and I have two children that are in the Bloomington Public Schools. They both go to Oak Grove Elementary. I just wanted to say that when my husband and I were deciding where to live after we graduated from college, the two biggest factors we took into consideration were proximity to our jobs and also the school districts. We knew we wanted to have children, and we did our research, and Bloomington had an impressive reputation, and I feel they still do. We've had nothing but good experiences with every single educator we have come in contact with, first at Indian Mounds Elementary and now at Oak Grove Elementary. And I really feel that a 2% wage increase is not out of bounds. For the teachers, I feel like that's the least we can do. They are so important and they give so much. They are so dedicated to our students. We've seen it on multiple occasions. And I also really feel like they deserve a say in curriculum development because they are, after all, the ones teaching the curriculum to our students. I really strongly encourage you guys to settle this contract. It's hard for me to believe that this is the second year we are going on without a settled contract for our teachers. I think that's disgraceful, and something should be done. Our educators deserve more, and our children deserve a lot more than that. Thank you.
It'll be real quick. It'll be real quick.
Last one was quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, this is important too.
Everything.
I'm the union steward for the custodial unit. This is my 6th contract with the district. And every time we start a contract, we sign an agreement saying we're going to go by fair bargaining standards and not change the rules. This contract, it hasn't been that way. Things have changed. We suggest stuff that comes back. They've taken 3 things away from us that we've had TAs on. The other thing I want to stress to everybody in the room is minimum wage is catching the starting salary of the custodial unit right now. And we're having a hard time finding people to work. And I think that's something you guys should start considering with wages for the support staff in this district also. I mean, we're here, we got all your schools open in time with construction and in great shape. And I do want to stress something that I've heard tonight that's not true. At Ridgeview, our staff have been very positive and upbeat. There's not been any negative, no bad morale. So I want that to be on the record for that. And I also just want to state that let's get this settled. It's getting ridiculous. You know, we're trying. And we're getting tired of getting told no every time we come to the table. You know, we send stuff back, boom, it gets backed off again. It's the worst contract I've ever tried to negotiate, trying to get things done in good faith. I've negotiated 3 contracts that we took a pay freeze so you guys could balance the budget. And we did it in good faith. We didn't ask for anything, we didn't go. I've been here 25 years, and I'm still proud of this district, and I still got to do a good job. But we'd love to have a little bit more positive support from everybody in this room. Thanks.
Up.
You know, Maureen, I just have one phrase to say. As a parent, and every parent in this room, I want you to realize we as parents, we have the power. We are their employers, us. Our teachers should not have to be dealing with this. So I implore you to go home and talk to your neighbors, your coworkers, anyone you can think of, and let them know we have the power. We have been sitting by for 15 months watching our teachers who do everything for our kids go to work, even though this is how they get treated. We have the power to make that stop. Do not let this happen in Bloomington. Thank you.
I'll take just a very brief moment. My wife and I, we have 4 kids in the district. We started in another district, and we're not at all impressed with the education our kids were receiving. We fortunately have kids that achieve at a very high level, and they weren't able to accommodate that. Bloomington is where we live now because we chose to come here because of that. It was because of the teachers, because everyone's supporting that, and we want to see that continue. And we ask for that support from the board.
Could you
Thank
identify yourself, please?
you. My name is Jamie Johnson, and I'm here with my wife, Amy.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Smallfield, and I am a unique parent in this district because I also work for the district. I'm here on behalf of not only my child, my colleagues, but also I am the president of the Kennedy Choirs Booster Club. And I have to tell you that as that president, I have to answer emails almost daily asking questions about what is going to happen to our organization, what is going to happen to the extracurricular activities, are the kids going to be able to go on the trip in March? And these are questions that I can't answer right now. I don't want to answer right now, but we're going to start finding some answers. I encourage you, as my board, the people that I voted for, as my friends, kids, I've had your kids in my classroom, some of you. Please, please take action at this time. Thank you.
My name is Sharon Bryan. I am also a parent in this district. I don't have much to say other than I support the teachers, and I would like to see you actively work to get to a contract that's equitable for all.
We'll be the last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but
Would you identify
my name is
yourself?
Kim Harsty. My name is Kim Harsty. I lived in Bloomington for 32 years. I have 3 children that attend Bloomington Public Schools. The teachers have been phenomenal throughout their education, and they still are, and I know they will be. But one thing I want to, this has been drug out too long, and one thing I want to make sure that happens, that we all respect each other, because we teach that to the children at a very young age and through all the age levels about being respect and treat each other with kindness. And I want respect in these negotiations as they move forward, because I want to make sure, I have a feeling that may have been missing, and have open ears. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the members of the district negotiating team to the table to respond to any of the school board members' questions. Is there someone that has a question to begin with? If not, I have mine.
I was actually going to, because there was a couple of things that our negotiating team might not know all the details about, some of the comments that were made here. First of all, I'd like to say I am also a parent in the district. I have 3 kids here. I chose to be here because I like the schools. We did get a bid to Seven Hills. We chose not to go because we like Bloomington Public Schools better. So I apologize in advance if you feel like you're being disrespected by me or the rest of the board. I can assure you that is not our intention. We live here, we work here, we have our kids in school here. We have family members that work here because we appreciate this district. Someone had mentioned curriculum. The teachers have more control on curriculum. That's great. When I was on the district curriculum advisory committee, before I was on the school board, I was on one of the subcommittees. It was the music, I believe it was music and art subcommittee, where it was all a group of teachers. They had their input. They brought it to the district curriculum advisory committee, who then brought it up to the school board, who then sent stuff back down, and it came back a couple of times. So when that committee, who worked for 2 years on curriculum, comes to the board and says, this is what we'd like to do, or this is the direction that we're going with music and art, this is what we'd like to do, it's going to be a very rare occurrence where the board says, no, we're not going to vote unanimously for this curriculum that the teachers created. So people also say, well, almost every vote of the board is a straight up or down vote, 100% unanimous one way or another. Part of it is because a lot of the work is done by either the administration, the cabinet members, or these subcommittees, the policy committees. In that case, it was the well, I guess it would have been primary and secondary art and music steering committees did all this work before it got to the board. For the policies, there are some MSBA policies that are recommended that we just approve because they are state mandated policies. And the MSBA does a lot of work, getting a lot of background, getting a lot of the legal stuff, like if you make this your policy because the state's mandating it and you get sued, this is probably going to be the best policy for you to have. There's other policies, though, that aren't state mandated, and even some of those MSBA policies we will go in and change. And so we have a policy committee. This just happened recently in the last round of policies. The administration brought some to our policy committee meeting. I think there was 5. 3 of them we said, yeah, these look great. 2 of them we said, no, we want more information. 1 of them we're still working on. So what happens is then when it comes back here to the table, we've already done all that work. So it might look like the superintendent or the director of human resources is handing this to us saying, here, vote for this. And we just look, dumb at each other like, oh, I don't have any questions. Well, it's because we've already asked all the questions. So that's one of the things I've heard it from several parents where they say, looks like you guys just go with whatever the administration says. That's why it appears that way, because a lot of the work is already done ahead of time. And so I wanted to get that out there just because I know I've heard it and I keep hearing it and I hear it over and over. Now, are there ways that the teachers could be more involved? I'm sure there's 1,000, and we have BFT president right behind me. I'm sure if I asked her, she could give me a list of some of them. She's nodding her head yes. And so that is what we're going towards. So I'm sorry this is taking too long. There's hard decisions that have to be made. You know, I'll give you, and this is related, a little bit unrelated. A way, and we aren't even considering this, so please don't take this out of context. A way that we could save money is by increasing the walking distance, because I believe the state statute is 2 miles for walking. You increase the walking distance, now you have less buses, perfect, save money. But we get an email from a parent just last week that says, my kid has to walk 1.25 miles, I think that's too far. So now the board has to sit there with that information and say, what do we do? Right? So if you think this is fun for us, if you think having you come here and people are mad at us because we asked them to leave because we don't want to voluntarily violate fire code, if you think that we want to do that, do you think that we want the fire marshal to come in here and say, you know what, you're in violation? We got a notice from the city a couple months ago because too many people were parking across the street from Jefferson. We got a note from the city because one of the contractors we hired started too early in the morning. It's like if you think that we want to voluntarily violate the city ordinance and make you stand out in the hall and then say, oh, we can't go to the auditorium, that is not what we're here to do. We are not here to try to, make this a big fight, make this a show like, oh, we're tough and, you're going to do what we say. We're here because we want to be here, because we want to serve the community. It costs $2 to run. I've heard people say, well, get rid of all of them. Okay, put down your $2. You want to volunteer? So I just wanted to throw that out there. One of the things that we did say at the beginning is that the board would not comment on what people said. And so obviously, that isn't always going to be the case. We aren't under the thumb of the superintendent, as some people like to say. So that's my take on this whole situation. I didn't realize 3 years ago when I ran for school board that I was going to be here in this position right now. So once again, I apologize it's taking so long. I think like everybody in the room, I really hope that we get this settled soon.
Thank you.
And as far as the teachers, I just want to give a shout out. I'm on the board, we're going through all this. And the teachers are even nice to my kids, so that is wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. All right, let's get back to the questions for our panel. I'll ask a question. Could you address the Q-Comp question?
Yeah.
The $400, could you just refresh our memory on that?
I'll turn that over to Rod because he's
Thank you.
the financial person.
The overall QCOM program that was originally established was to be, the expenses were to be offset by the revenues that we receive from the state. With that program over time, we've added different groups to it, early childhood, ABE, those type of groups to it, which have driven the costs upward. More people on, we need more coaches. So all those costs group, we were up to about $500,000 of overspending. So what we did is we, the curriculum area, worked with the QComp committee to come with a resolution to help with the budget cuts for this next year, or for 15-16 of the reduction of the $400.
Thank you. Do you want to address also the 2% that the state gives us? How much is actually received?
Well, the state money that we receive for the general fund is about 70% of our total revenue. So if we receive a 2% from them, it's really like receiving a 1.4%. So it's really not it's not increasing our revenue by 2%. It's only increasing a portion of our revenue by that amount.
And
Someone, go ahead.
along with that, could you also include what the yearly cost of steps and lanes is without any increases of that 1.4%? Do you know that?
It's about $2 million on a, a little over $100 million budget, so it's about a 2% increase.
So of that 1.4, whatever you said we had, or I can't remember what you said. What did you just say, the percent
The
for the same?
1.4%,
Yeah.
the steps and lanes aren't even covered by that increase from the state.
Entire 1.4 is spent already on steps and lanes before you go to any additional revenue? Is that what?
Yes.
Or money, on the schedule? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, I have a question about the Q comp. If you could elaborate, my understanding is the state does not provide Q comp funding for the early childhood. Is that correct? Or do they now? Is there something about that? And that's why we have more coaches? Or we just have more coaches than other people because we decided to have that? Or how is that?
You don't know one?
Might have to research that and get
Okay.
back to you.
All right, thank you.
Director Steigoff.
My understanding is we have more coaches than, that was the reason, so we could have for the early child program too or something? Okay. Your caseload is what?
The same as other districts.
Okay. But we have more
Madam Chair?
teachers that are
Yes.
included that weren't before.
Oh, sorry. You
Sir?
Go ahead.
you all set? Just a quick question. I heard, I apologize, I tried to take the best notes that I could.
Me too.
First of all, thank you all for coming. It's nice to see so much interest in what I do for a living. I mean that. I'm not trying to be funny. It's really nice to see you here. Students, boy, if you paid twice what you paid tonight, you got your money's worth. So I hope you stay longer. I'd like to address one item and then ask one question. I heard in a presentation this evening that if I followed it correctly, the person speaking alluded to board members sharing, keeping track of and sharing how many visits they've made to schools. And I've been accused of oversimplifying, but I assume that one was pointed at me. I take great pride in what I do as a board member. I take great pride in witnessing what I call the magic. Now, I talked to our folks from Farmington earlier, and I said, what do you do? Second grade, fourth grade, special ed, first grade. Am I close? Not bad for a board member that just met you? When I get to walk into a school and when I get to see what happens, it's magic. And that's all that's how you describe what happens. So when somebody says that a board member, when I first came to the board, we were accused of not being there. I fixed it. Now I'm there. And now I'm accused of not paying attention. Now I know who said it. I'm not going to mention their name. You know who said it. I want you to know that just this morning, a member of the House of Representatives called me on my phone. I turned it off. I have an ongoing conversation about adequate, sustainable, predictable funding. For what? For our school district. I asked them to return the funding levels at least to 2008. And then on your increase, I wanted 0.5% above inflation. That's what I'm asking for. Now, you don't know that because none of you have asked me. All you have to do is ask, and you'll get an answer. Now, I'm advocating for each one of you That funding goes to your salaries. That funding keeps you in a job. It keeps you in your positions. You can wake up with a predictable revenue that we can predict. Yes, it's coming. Now, just because a House of Representatives called me up and I had this ongoing conversation, that doesn't guarantee anything. But if you think I'm not advocating for you, if you think I don't hear you, if you think I just play games because I tell jokes when you see me, you're wrong. Now, I know that all of my coworkers feel the same, and in their own way they advocate. All you have to do is pick up the phone or send an email. Ask my opinion. Ask our opinion. We can work it out. We can do this through productive, constructive conversation. You guys, you're magicians. Each one of you who's in front of students have a magic wand. And I'm envious of that because I don't possess it. But I do my best and the rest of us do our best to make very difficult decisions. So please keep that in mind. Now, the question that I have, I heard a question that said, it's been over a year, almost 2 years, without a contract. Is there a contract? Is there language that everyone is working with?
Yes. The past contract stays in effect until the next contract is negotiated and agreed upon and TA'd. So yes, everybody's still working under a contract. We're abiding by contract. The unit's abiding by contract.
Okay, I know I've asked that question many times before, but it's very important to know that.
Yeah.
So there is language. It guides the teachers. It guides the staff. It guides everyone. It's just not a recent or a new contract. That's what we're talking about tonight. So if you hear somebody say we don't have a contract, that is not the truth. Okay, and once again, I extend the opportunity for anyone and everyone who has questions. Send them. I assume that even though my phone's off, my inbox is just going to be crammed full. Please, go ahead, send them. And I know the rest of my coworkers are interested in those questions. So, thank you.
Anyone else? I'd like to know a little bit more about the issues forum that was brought up. I know it was in effect years ago, and
The issues forum is part of contract. It's written into contract. You can have an issues forum whenever anybody would call for one. The district has offered an issues forum, and I can't remember what month it was, maybe November, December, I can't remember, and we were told no. So we have offered an issues forum opportunity, and we were never given a topic, and the meeting was never set. So.
Sure, the speaker is
Mike.
on.
Put your
It
mic up.
doesn't seem like the microphone is.
All right,
It's the
do
microphone.
you want to address the leaving teachers question?
I can tell you the past year's data. I started looking through that today. As I said earlier, I think we posted out, the board had asked about if the rate of teachers leaving was increasing, and I said no, there really was no significant change. What has changed, I think the number of our leaves have been changing. You know, we say we have so many new teachers this year and that there's more new teachers in buildings. We have a lot of people on medical leave, childcare leave, and other type of leaves. Over 30 people right now are on long-term leaves. We replace those people with long-call reserves. So if you're seeing more people, new people in the building, it could be because of the leave types. Not because of people who have quit or resigned, but because we do under contract allow teachers to take time off to take care of themselves and their family and their kids. They can ask for a whole year off, you know, at a time for childcare. And we had a couple, at least 2 or 3 late child care leaves with like 2 weeks before school where their child care fell through and they asked for the whole year off, and we granted that. As far as quits and resignations, I pulled up last year's data. Over 45% were 3 years or less in the district of our resignations. So almost half of the teachers were 3 years or less of people who left the district last year. 56% were 5 years or less. So that's over half. 30% who resigned retired. In fact, we have a few of those who have come back to work for us this year. I want to say at least 3 or 4 now have come back and are working either on long calls for us or in subbing situations. They want to stay active. So even though they're retired, they're still active in Bloomington and still working. So that's, the data.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for panel?
Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do not have a question for you, but I do have a comment. So as long as, seems like tonight we're getting a little bit out of protocol, right? Addressing the board over the time, which is, in my opinion, totally fine. We gotta listen to our community. But also, as board members have expressed, how you felt, how you feel about this. Let me just tell you, or please hear from the teacher at the table, because I am a teacher, and I am a proud teacher, and I am really proud to be a teacher working in a public school. And I work with high school kids. And I just want you to know that, first of all, I do appreciate you being here today, all of you, members of the community, parents, teachers, are wonderful teachers. Some of you have been teachers of my kids. And, I'd be really close to my heart because you have been wonderful teachers. We have even members of Education Minnesota. We have your president here supporting you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for expressing your concerns and your frustrations with us. And let me just tell you that I can feel your pain. It's really wonderful to be a teacher, but it's really difficult. So I wouldn't call it a pain, but it's really difficult, and we know that. And we know that it goes beyond the salary that we receive, because it gets into, those times when we are working with our kids and we're dealing with so many challenges that come from family situations, mental health situations, ELL, kids that sometimes we cannot even understand, or, we don't know well enough, and sometimes we don't know what to do. But let me just tell you that, I do understand your frustration, and I, as you, and I know that the rest of the board members here present, we do have an interest in getting this contract settled as soon as possible, because we care for you, we care about you, but we also care about our kids, and we want what's best for our kids. Now, please remember something, that this cause that you bring here today, it doesn't stay just here. This is just part of what the situation and what the real problem is. I've been serving in a number of committees, including legislative committees, and I can tell you that we have a bigger issue that's present here that has to do with the fund that we get from the state. So if we can work together in trying to get more funding through the years so that our needs and the needs of our kids get met, that would be awesome. If you can support us in this too, because we as board members are the people that go there and talk to your state legislators, and we ask for that money, and we ask every single year over and over again, and it's almost like we're begging. And like I said last couple of weeks, we always receive conditional love, those little bits here and there, and then sometimes it's go figure out what you can do with this little tiny bit that I just gave you, and sometimes it is you have to do this with this little bit that I gave to you. So let's think about that, and once this contract is settled, then let's work together on what it's, rebuilding trust, because we have heard you about this too. Rebuilding trust and really working together so that we can get something else, something better out of the funds that we get from the state. So, I don't know, I guess that's all I have to say. I don't want to take the time, so with all respect, Madam Chair, I just needed to say that. So, I am a teacher too. In my heart, it's in education, and I'll do everything that's possible, anything that I can do, anything that's in my hand to help our kids and to help our teachers. That's all I can say. And our communities, because my community is very important. The people that are helping us and supporting us, those taxpayers that are really paying attention to what we're doing. So we need to work together as a community. Thank you. Thank you.
Don.
I'm just going to add a little bit since Director Corman started down this road. What many of you maybe don't know about me is before I ran for school board, I spent probably the last 20 years of my life advocating for funding for public school and supporting public schools and advocating at the state level as a volunteer. I didn't get paid anything for it for the last 20 years. And I believe in public school. And I'm probably guilty behind Dick as being the next longest list of things that I go to when we sit here at the board meeting. But my attitude on that is if I don't talk about the things that I see in the buildings and the good work that I see, who else is going to talk about it? We already have enough people out there in this country that are anti-public school and anti-teacher. And so I think it's my job to talk about the things that I see that are great about public school. And I just want you to understand that when I'm, I don't know, whatever we were accused of having our long list of things that we go to, it's not about what I go to. It's about what I see, and I try to look at something positive that I see every building I go to so that I can report here the great work that you're doing when I come back here. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and this school board remains optimistic and hopeful that an agreement can be reached with the teachers. We will continue to respect the negotiation process and ask for others to do likewise. Thank you. It brings us to Part A of our agenda. Someone like to move Part A?
So moved.
Second?
Part A is our minutes, personnel items, field trip approval, grants, contracts, and agreements. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Maybe we should wait until they empty, because they can't hear.
Thanks to our seniors for coming, or for our students for coming tonight. I hope you got good notes.
When you said that all we do is just list where we go, I'm not trying to do that, and I want them to understand that if I don't talk about what they do, who's going to do it?
I feel a lot better though.
Yeah. He doesn't even have any skin in him.
All right, I think we can begin with our Part B. Would someone like to move the bid award for the armored car service?
Madam Chair. Be resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 accept the Loomis Armored U.S. Houston, Texas proposal to provide armored courier service for for the district for the 2016-2017 and 2017-2018 school years, and authorize administration to enter into a contract with Loomis Armored U.S. to provide this service.
Thank you. There's a second from Mr. Bennett. Our Director of Finance, Rod Zivkovich, is here to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Just one quick one. Rod, have we always used an armored service for this?
Yes, well, what is part of this bid process is we've made a substantial savings by having less pickups. We're working through the process. We worked with the sites to find their needs, administration, the custodial services, all that. We found a new way that we can process the information that will be a lot less expensive than it was before.
Okay, and just one additional, I'm hoping that the times and the deliveries and the pickups are not publicly known. I mean, it would kind of defeat the purpose.
No, they never are.
Okay. Thank you.
Have we always used Loomis before, or have we used
No,
different?
we've had different vendors handling it for us.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the bid award for the armored car service, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have an elementary summer school 2016 update with Gina Miller and Andy Kubas.
Gina.
Please.
It appears that we now have a surplus of chairs.
Julie, I got a chair for you. Thanks.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Fujitaki, school board members, viewing public. My name is Andy Kubas. I'm the Executive Director of Learning Supports here in the Bloomington Public Schools. As we started in our endeavor in learning supports, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we looked at was our targeted services delivery model. And so in our department, Gina Miller, who sits to my right, to your left, was charged with looking at studying what we had done in the past, things that had worked, looking at the research of what's best practice out there when it comes to alternative learning type of settings in the elementary world, and has done a wonderful job leading that group. With us tonight, we have 3 teachers who taught in the summer experience, and then Gina wants to walk you through a PowerPoint of a report of what happened this summer, the good things that happened, and then what we have planned in the future with the rest of our targeted services. Gina Miller.
Madam Chair, Superintendent Fujitaki, school board members, and the viewing audience, thank you very much for having us tonight. Really just wanted to recap kind of what we've been talking about up until this point, and we implemented our summer school. Wanted to share with you what that looked like, and then hear from our teachers their experiences teaching summer school. Yeah, please. Reminder, here are the best practices in summer school, and we worked really hard with teacher leaders to develop units to really focus on this. So we ensured small class size. We had parent and guardian engagement. We had consistent attendance. We measured attendance for the first time in summer school. Opportunities for that individualized instruction. We had lots of academic language built into our units of study. It was experiential. It was really engaging. And it focused on addressing the opportunity gap. So a little reminder, we had 16 teachers come together in the spring to develop 4 units of study. And all of those were really based on a theme and embedded math and reading rather than focus on remediation. Those units were, week 1 was gardening. Within the gardening unit, the students did a lot of planting. They measured seeds, they measured the growth over time. They made a fairy garden. The Como Conservatory came out and did a class. Students ate vegetables that were grown in gardens. It was an awesome experience. Week 2 was the outdoors. Remind you, this summer we had a week that was very, very hot. It happened to be our outdoor week unit. And unfortunately, our culminating thing of going to Moyer Park was canceled because it was too hot for us to walk a bunch of elementary kiddos over to Moyer Park for the morning. But our teachers were amazing. They set up tents in their classrooms. They just knocked it out of the park that last day with not much guidance to make it happen. They did it all. Students learned about conservationism, recycling, and did an awesome scavenger hunt that week. The next week was about the oceans. Kids at various grade levels, some of them studied sharks and stingrays, and why do we have oceans? Where are they? Why do we need them? They went to Sea Life Aquarium, where they took different classes there as well. It was an awesome week, filled with tons of activities. There were dioramas and all sorts of stuff being made as well. Week 4 was the Olympics. Our last week ended the same week the Olympics started. So it was a perfect opportunity to build some background for all of our students. So they learned about why do we have Olympics? Where do people come from to go to the Olympics? How do you become a really good athlete? All of those things. And then they had opening ceremonies. Each class made a flag, they did a walk, then they competed in games as well. So it was an awesome way to build that for those students.
Jump in and offer a little color commentary along the way. So as a reminder, we've presented before, but as a reminder that this experience was steeped primarily in experiential learning, that we were really going after the experience gap more than we were going after an achievement gap, with the understanding through the research and through the stuff that we had studied that providing good experiences for kids will allow them an opportunity to hang their learning on. So I shared this story before. I'll share it probably for the last time. I was a principal at Valley View Elementary School, if you remember this story. I was watching a third grade teacher teach. She was talking about pigs being in a pen, and I watched a little girl who I knew fairly well, who didn't have a lot of experiences, pick up her pen and look at it, and I know she was wondering, how did all those pigs get in this pen, right? She didn't have the experience of what it meant to farm or what it meant to be in a farm. And I would offer that many of the experiences that were offered in summer school, designed by Gina and the amazing team of teachers that did that, got at the root of what that was, the experiences.
Within each unit, there were anchor texts and lots of language and reading and mathematics and science happening all at the same time. The students just didn't know what was happening. It was so exciting and engaging, they didn't even realize that's what we were doing. Another aspect that we added this summer was family engagement. We had an open house the first week of school. Feels very different than what parents are used to for summer school. So wanted the opportunity for parents to come in and be able to meet the teacher and just feel better about this different thing that was happening. We had more than 70 families came, which was pretty good considering we didn't realize it was also the Bloomington Police Department's open house that night. So we had a really good turnout. We're looking forward to building on that for next year. We also utilized a lot of Connect Ed messaging to remind parents of it's Monday, come to school, it's starting, it's the last day, those types of things as well. Attendance. We measured in the past, we took it basic attendance, but we hadn't really analyzed it or talked about who came, what were some trends. So we did a quick analysis. It's our first summer really making sure we did attendance by teacher. And we had 393 students attend. A metric that we're looking at this year is how many students attend 95% of the days that they could attend. 74% of our students attended at least 95% of the time. We'd like to see that more, but you only get to miss a day, and you're at 75%. It's in line with our district average at our elementary sites, and of course, that's something that we're always wanting to look at. How do we improve that? This year, because it was such a teacher-developed program, I really wanted to make sure that we got feedback from the teachers every week when after they taught one of those units. How do we make it better? How do we add to it? How do we make it more real for students so that we can use that to improve the units? And then at the end, did a summative feedback about the entire experience, really focused on that student engagement. It's hard to measure, it's hard to put your finger on. Teachers know what it looks like and feels like, so we asked them for their input. So as you can see, most of the teachers, so we had 22 out of 24 of our teachers responded and really felt it was highly engaging for our students. I asked them to kind of tell me about why. Do you feel it was, how do you know your students were engaged? Here's a couple quotes. It was when I was putting these quotes together that I realized I really wanted you to hear their voices instead of just reading some quotes. So looking at this, you'll notice trends. And when I looked at all of that, it's really about, they noticed no behavior issues.
That was mine.
Was that yours? Awesome. Attendance was great. They were happy, excited. They noticed lots of active participation. Remember, these are students who, a lot of them struggle every day in school. And they're sharing with their peers. They're making suggestions. They're really involved and engaged in the classroom all day. So it was really exciting. So again, I really wanted to make sure you heard from our teachers here. So I'm going to introduce Julie Checo. She currently teaches kindergarten at Olson Elementary. This summer she taught incoming first graders, and I wanted her to have a chance to share about her experience.
Thanks, Gina. It was an incredible summer. It was an exciting curriculum. The teachers who worked on developing this curriculum put their hearts and souls into it, and it was engaging and dynamic and hands-on. And my little first graders had a ball. They had a wonderful time. And one thing that really sticks out in my mind is I had a child in my class who I knew from Olson Elementary. She was not one of my kindergartners. She was in one of my colleagues' classes, but I knew a little bit about her and, struggled a bit in kindergarten. And she was so successful and so excited about what she was doing. And all that thematic hands-on learning was so great for those children. I really believe that those kids had as wonderful of a summer as I did. And I give a lot of kudos to the teachers who developed that curriculum. They worked really hard. There were so many good activities to choose from. We weren't even able to do them all. And it was a fantastic experience.
Thank you. Next to Julie is Carolyn Shelstad. Carolyn is currently a 6th grade science teacher at Olson Middle School and taught a group of our incoming 6th graders.
So I'm all about experiential education. It's hard sometimes during the school year to make it work. But this summer I had a great opportunity. I loved all the weeks, but my favorite, simply because of my own personal experiences, was the outdoors week. I love to camp. So I brought my tent, set it up in the room, brought all my camping gear, showed all the kids. They sat in my camping chair. They laid in my tent. I brought my sleeping bag. I later washed it. But one thing that I asked them to do was to create an adventure for themselves in Minnesota at one of the Minnesota state parks. Not one of my students had ever been to a Minnesota state park. And about 10 years ago, a guy named Richard Louv developed the idea of nature deficit disorder, that we can eliminate so many learning issues that kids have and adults have simply by spending more time outside. And I guarantee you that proved true this summer with this experience. And I also incorporated yoga every single morning, a lot of mindfulness, and everybody did it. And there were some really great positive comments. But that really opened my eyes that none of my students, when we're talking about the experience gap, I was like, are you serious? Nope, none of them had ever been. And they were looking at a map of Minnesota. They were excited about what they might see there, the animals, the geographical location, all of the natural resources that were involved. And they really liked being there, and they learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. And next to Carolyn, I have Nicole Walters. Nicole is currently at Valley View Elementary ESL teacher in the 1st grade team, and she taught incoming 2nd graders this summer. And she was one of our teachers on our writing team.
First of all, I was so engaged by the opportunity to create the curriculum with fellow teachers who are equally as passionate and want to be able to use their experience to really address the needs of all of our students. When we got to choose our students, I chose all English language learners from Valley View Elementary because I kind of wanted to give myself and them a challenge to see how much I could improve their understanding, reduce that gap in their academic ability and English ability, hold high expectations for all of them, using the curriculum that I created with my colleagues across the district. And as has been said many times, they didn't know that they were learning. Every single part of the day, was integrating reading, math, writing, listening skills, discussion skills, vocabulary that they had never heard before, but they were so excited just to use, to talk with their peers. They absolutely did not see it as a learning experience where there was the usual typical struggle for them to keep up with their peers. This was just engaging and fun for them. And they took pride in it. When they realized we need plants so we can breathe, after learning about photosynthesis, they were so excited, decided we need to protect all the plants outside. We're not going to step on them. We're not going to pick them. It also was really great just to build their academic language and build up to the point, actually I'm quoted in the second quote, that they got to the end of a week and they were able to read a book about the theme at a higher level than they could usually read because they had learned so many words. They could read a text about plants that were growing and they recognized the words that we've talked about and we'd written together all through the week. And I have two small examples I wanted to share with you because they give me the shivers every time. One boy during Outdoors Week with our camping gear, he was able to take labels with each word that labeled everything you need when you go on a camping trip. He was able to take each word and find the object, identify it by reading the word, labeling it. Then he was able to take a picture or have a picture taken of himself using the app Seesaw on the iPads. And he was able to record himself explaining what you need when you go camping and why you need it, using a sentence structure that most first graders I have never been able to teach. You need this, so, etc. And he did that with enthusiasm. He wanted to show he knew what to do with all these things. And finally, I had a student who has always been very shy and non-participatory. We did an activity where they were collecting facts, doing research about ocean animals. She was able to find all about the prey, the predators, the habitat. And some students wanted help. They didn't want to do it by themselves, but she came up to me after working independently for about an hour, showed me her notes and said, "I'm not a giver-upper."
Very nice. Thank you, Paul. So as you can tell, we've had a lot of fun building it, and we're really excited for our work this year. So some of our work this year will be around how do we take what we've learned from summer school and build it into our extended day programming within targeted services at the elementary level. What components of that work in an after-school program? What components will give us some really great outcomes for these kiddos? And in doing that, we'll also work with Dr. Heisted and looking at map data for students this fall and again next spring to see, do we have this lasting effect that we're really hoping for when it comes to that academic language and that language being built that they can build hang their new learning on as we move forward. Yep. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Jim first.
Why are there oceans?
I wasn't a part of that unit. You'd have to ask one of the second graders.
So the ships can sail.
Yeah.
There would be no fishing boats if there's no ocean.
There were 393, and they were very diverse. How was it? Primarily diverse students there, or what was the makeup? If just for curiosity's sake, from the picture, it looks like there were a lot of.
It's a nice representation. Yep.
Okay.
It was a nice representation of our district. It was diverse students with lots of different language backgrounds, experiential backgrounds. It was a wide variety of students.
So they all gathered when you have a particular theme. They were all in tune with that theme and would really get excited about it. And we've heard this before, that sometimes the kids say, "Gee, I wish regular school was this much fun. You know, I'd be able to learn and read and do some of that stuff." And as you mentioned, incorporating some of these ideas into the thing, having an experiential learning experience during a week in a regular school year, would all of a sudden excite a lot more kids, or a lot of kids, than they normally would do sitting in the classroom, even though they have fun.
It takes
So
a lot
is
of
that
planning.
part of the plan? Pardon?
That takes a lot of planning.
It takes
a lot of time.
A lot of people who are very enthusiastic about planning as well, sharing ideas and coming to consensus.
Because then the excitement dies when they go back to regular school, you know, then they have to, oh.
Our goal was to
Unless
make
they come to my classroom.
work with these ladies. Our goal was to make summer school not a consequence.
No, I'm just kidding.
Was to make summer school fun.
Okay, we'll go this side, then we'll go over here.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for being willing to put the work into this and try something new, and it sounds like it was greatly successful. I do have one regret, though. I'm kind of wishing that I didn't come and volunteer and hang out there because it sounds like it was really exciting, and I think I missed big by not being there this summer.
What's
So
next year?
I apologize. I will be there next summer.
Don't worry, we're going to do it next year.
Rick?
This question isn't as fun. What is ELA? I saw it was ELA and math. Is that English language?
English language arts.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
At first I thought it was like Early Learner Academy. No. 'cause
That's
we got
another
that.
ELA.
And then you were saying you try to measure attendance, but if you miss one day, that's less than 95% of the possible days.
Yep.
We might need
'Cause
to
it's
come up
20
with
days.
a new metric. We might have to say
Yep.
80% for that is success. And then, you know, it's funny because experiential learning, I've done some research on it, and it seems like people that do it always say that this is great, but it seems like it's so hard to get it implemented into mainstream curriculum. And part of it is, because it's completely different than what you're used to doing. And so it's really a rethinking of the curriculum. Are there some small pieces that you think you're going to be carrying over, or some big pieces that you think you'll be carrying over?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm just speaking as a kindergarten teacher. We do a lot of experiential learning in kindergarten, a lot of hands-on. And that's the nature of working with children at that age.
And I teach science. And
Science. So it's all experiential, sort of.
got some former students sitting over there. I am all about it. In addition to classroom, outside of classroom too. I think it's really important that we have the support of the school board in providing opportunities to students even outside of the school day. Trips like Eagle Bluff and Widgie-Wagon, different field trips like that, to make sure that we have your support in knowing that it is beyond the school day, but that we can go somewhere and have different experiences, and that's really what the kids remember. That's really what changes a life and sends them in a new direction. It isn't, mastering your multiplication tables at all. It's not what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you just as my personal experience as a student here in Kennedy is when it was like, okay, and I don't mean to offend, periodic table of elements. Don't care, sorry. When it's this, let's measure light.
You
I
sing
don't
the
care.
song?
But then,
Sorry.
but then when it was, okay, we're gonna give you all these chemicals. You mix them all together.
Sophie?
Yeah, and it was like all chemical names, and then at the end, they're like, oh, we're making peanut brittle. This is really cool. So it's like that experience was really beneficial for me personally.
I've also noticed that if I bring in the culture of my English language learners, they're much more engaged in the experiences. So I've been working co-teaching during math. I try to bring in things that they are familiar with that we can use to add, subtract, count coins, etc. They're much more willing to do that because they might have this experience in an everyday shopping trip with mom or dad. And then I can build on those experiences to those that they haven't had before. So those are small experiential learning opportunities.
Might I say as a commentary, I had the good fortune to work with Ms. Walters at Valley View. We worked together, but every one of the teachers here, Emily Stiles and Peggy McIntosh said that you should see, curriculum should be windows and mirrors. You should be able to look in and see yourself in your own culture, and then you should see others as well. And I guarantee that the strength of each of these three teachers that sit in front of us is they get that probably without ever understanding that they were doing it, but providing windows and mirrors into their curriculum. That's how you get engagement.
That's great. Do you have anything, Tom? Nope. Go ahead, Dick.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for putting the time and effort and energy into it. I happen to be a huge outdoor fan. And in the limited spare time I have, you can see me traipsing down 9 Mile Creek in the Minnesota River Valley with my camera chasing wildlife. So I love outdoors. And when I saw the outdoor component, right away I wanted to know, how did you handle the meals for outdoors? Did you cook anything over simulated fire, or?
There can be no fire at summer school.
Fire at summer school,
That's
sorry.
that's why we said simulated. How did you do the meals?
We
How did you-
actually we made s'mores on this, what was it, like 98 degrees?
Like 110.
By putting the marshmallows outside. Seriously, and then it was super melty, and talked about the transfer of energy.
Cool, and the kiddos, so I've heard a couple of anecdotal stories, and I'll share them with you because I'm not sure if you've heard them. Some of the students, when it ended, the story got back to me was, is it over? Do we have to go? What about next week? What are we? And so, just hearing a story, and I heard through a parent, not the student, is it over? What a great compliment. And I think that's what it was meant for, and that's why they shared it with me. So, thanks. I mean, it just seemed like such a really neat thing for these kiddos, and you hit it on the head. They really needed it, and putting the sentences together. So we're going to watch out for that one because they'll be up in front of the board telling us what for pretty soon.
Can't wait.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Just very interesting to hear about the different experiences that you had and the experiences that the kids that you had got, during this time. A lot of successful things, looks like. Total success, right? But I just want to ask you if during the planning of this or inside the classroom, with your kids, if you faced some challenges and what those challenges were, and if you can foresee other challenges different coming or the same ones. If you could tell us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah. It's a difficult question.
I know. Well, the day was a little long.
A little longer than it's been.
It was a long day. We made it work by having a lot of different activities. And we had breakfast and lunch and, the way that each grade level organized their classes. We made it work.
What was the day? What was the hours?
Students came at 8:15
To 1:45.
to 1:45. So teacher day was 8 to 2:15. It was nice. Nice second job.
Mr. Mulvey.
If I might, from the
Please.
gallery over here.
Please.
A couple of people have brought up experiential learning and how does that translate into what we're doing during the regular school year. I would just add that through our district instructional team and our district learning supports team, those are teacher teams that get together at their buildings and at the district on a regular basis. And when I heard you talk about co-teaching, we trained a bunch of teachers in co-teaching this summer. We're going full court press on co-teaching and getting the cultural experience in there. So I think there are avenues to build off of this work and leverage some of the learning that happened over the summer in the regular school year through those areas.
Well, hearing no further questions, thank you for your time. Would you like to make a statement?
I just wanted to say thank you again for allowing us to present this. This is really, really exciting stuff. Again, credit to my colleague Gina Miller who ran with this and to all of the teachers who planned and served in the summer school model. It couldn't have been possible without them. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And if Ms. Jalsta would like to stay till after and sing us that song.
Do you know the first 10 elements of the periodic table? There's hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, and neon. And she's a senior, so that was 6 years ago. Very
good. Good job, both of you. Thank you. That brings us to voluntary pre-K funding update. Tamara Steve is here to tell us a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Boudreau, Les Fujitaki, Superintendent, and the school board, and the viewing audience. Seems like we're really acknowledging them quite a bit this evening. We must have forgot about them in the past. I'm Tamara Steve, Executive Director of Community Services, and one of the areas that I oversee is our early childhood programming, known as Early Learning Services. Very excited to be here and share good news, which is that the ISD 271 application for voluntary pre-kindergarten funding was approved by the Minnesota State Department of Education for 4 of our sites. The estimated allocation for us is $833,000. We received this funding for our 4 elementary school-based sites, which are Valley View, Indian Mounds, Washburn, and Oak Grove Elementary Schools. Because of this new funding, for pre-kindergarten funding, the district will provide free 4-year-old preschool programming for the school district year 2016-17 for our currently enrolled students. The district is also funding an additional 54 seats. Of those 54 new seats, 8 seats were reserved for special education programming, and 10 seats were filled with students that we had on our waiting list. So that left us with 36 new open seats to serve students, and we decided to do a lottery selection process. That process was closed last Friday, and the good news is that 31 students and their families applied for these 36 openings, so we can serve everyone that applied, plus have a little wiggle room for students that come in for screening in the fall, which typically happens. They come in, are screened, and we don't have anywhere to serve them. So we're very excited to be able to have room to accommodate those students who come in for fall screening. So again, very excited to have this new funding. It meant a lot of last-minute changes in August. So thank you to many of the colleagues in this room for your support in some of that planning, as well as the Early Learning Services team led by Carol Huttner. Extreme amount of work to do because, as you know, we also work with Richfield. And so it was a ton of work that they did in order to pull off our programming, which started today. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a quick comment. Just want to say thanks. I'll reiterate what you had said. Thanks to all the hard work, energy, and effort that went into making this happen. Most of us had our kiddos in preschool at some point, and we understand just how important that is and what a wonderful start it is to their educational careers. So to be able to serve even more students is just really fascinating and fantastic. So thanks again for all the hard work and energy.
I just want to make sure that we have this clear because I saw this question out and I heard this question out in the community, a parent that I can't remember for sure what program they were in, but they were asking why was it free this year and how did we have additional funding for that? So could you just clarify that this grant can only be used for that and we had to, how can you clarify that to make sure? I know you said it, but can you just
Say it again.
Say it again. I just want to make sure everybody understands it and it's clear.
Okay, when we started registering students for the 2016-17 preschool year for a 4-year-old program, we did not have the funding that we have now. So based on that, on the information we had, we built a program based on a sliding fee scale. And what we have, that is something that we have done in the past as well. So that's how we were registering students starting in January. As we came to the spring, we reserved pathways to scholarship increased funding, and then the first week of August, we were given funding from MDE, voluntary pre-K. So that changed the whole dynamic of the money that we were working with, and so as a team and led by the cabinet and input from the PLT, we then could take the funding that we were currently going to use at the 4 school sites awarded voluntary pre-K funding and move that funding elsewhere. So that would allow us to provide free 4-year-old programming with all of the different funding streams kind of woven, braided together, open 54 new seats, as well as some more support services that will go towards our students and families and the teachers in the classroom.
Thank you.
Rick.
And so that led me to another clarifying question, because I've seen it and people have asked me, and I don't know the answer either. There's a difference, actually I should phrase this as a question. Is there a difference between preschool, Early Learners Academy, and are there other early childhood programs that are similar that people may confuse?
Yes. Again, going back to the planning this year, we came to the school board for permission to change how we did preschool for 4-year-olds because we had multiple programs. Kinder Prep, Bright Beginnings would be the two that you probably are most aware of. So again, when we were planning what we knew in January, we went to, instead of having 3 or 4 different kinds of programs, it's one preschool program. And the sliding fee scale, and then all of the programs were the same amount of days through the calendar year. So it's to try and make everything the same and make it less confusing, as well as giving the good dosage to all of our participants in our 4-year-old preschool programming. So yes, in the past we've had multiple names. Now we're trying to kind of rebrand it and say it's a preschool for 4-year-olds, and then we also have preschool for 3-year-olds.
And is Early Learners Academy that, or is it a separate thing also?
Early Learners Academy is a separate program which provides daycare and a preschool experience and is located at our elementary schools. And that is not as large of a program as our preschool program at our other sites, but that is something that I think was started about 5 years ago to serve our communities.
Okay, so the main difference is a ELA, it serves as a daycare, like you can drop off at 6:30 and pick up at
Correct.
6 or something like that. and
It's a
the
completely
preschool
different
is
design.
Like 8 to noon or some.
A
variation,
preschool,
8 to
actually
1 or
preschool
something like
is about 2.5 hours
Okay.
of in the classroom, and then the transportation on either side of that.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Dr. Bennett.
Actually, Rick asked one of my questions, but I want to, share in your statement that this is good news, because this is something that many people in this room have been working a long time to get free preschool for children. And it's good that's a 4-year-old. And it's good news for Bloomington, but the work's not done. The rest of the state, how many districts, 72, got this? So there's a lot of districts that didn't get this.
Correct.
So
There were a lot of districts that did not receive the funding, so quite a few superintendents calling to ask, how did we receive it, why? And there was lots of different considerations. I do truly believe, though, that because of the incredible foundation that has been created with the support of the school district over the last several years led us to be at the top. We had things in place. They didn't fund all of our sites. But, I mean, when we're putting that all together and saying, here's what we're already doing, you forget because the teachers and the staff are just doing it every day. But it's an impressive early childhood program.
Yes, and I think a lot of the credit goes to you and your staff and our Parent Advisory Council and the school board and this district that have been
That the district
the
has been
champion for
committed,
public
absolutely.
preschool. And so my question after that is, what does the typical day look like? Hours-wise, how many days a week is this program?
We do have a few different models. The main model is 5 days a week and 2.5 hours of instructional classroom time. So we're including transportation to bring them there, and then 2.5 hours in the classroom, and then they go home. So we have morning shift 5 days a week and an afternoon shift 5 days a week. We also do have 3 full-day programs. 3 days of all-day programming. So we have 2 sections of that are also running.
Okay, and that's also free of charge?
Correct,
All for
as
4-year-olds?
part of our
Okay.
4-year-old preschool model.
Excellent. So now our next step is to get it for 3-year-olds.
Yes, so yes, actually the next step would be what is our model for 2017-18 based on that we know about all of this new funding. So what will our model be?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to ask again, and so how many years is the funding for again? How many years will we have
3
this?
years was
3
in the
years.
statute.
Okay. And so then we have the issue of in 3 years that funding runs out, and then if we don't get any more funding for it, then we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it ourselves if we want to keep it going. Is that really what we're left with then? I mean, it's good for 3 years, but hopefully we can continue the funding, and hopefully we'll get in more grants. Or the state
Correct.
will move
I mean,
to?
I cannot foresee the future,
Okay.
but the difference in how this funding works is that they are like a gen ed student. And so they are funded in the same way. It flows right to the schools. It's very different than other early childhood funding, especially the Pathways to Scholarship. That's kind of the newest funds that we had before voluntary pre-K. And so it's funded much differently. And so I know Rod had some insights into that. So yes, it could be a possibility, but it feels like because they put it into statute in the way that they did, that there's some foundational work that they're laying for the future for a commitment to 4-year-old programming.
I'm assuming that we will be able to use our data from it and the state will be able to use the numbers that we give them to show that it's successful, and then hoping that the state will move for everyone is what I'm assuming they're trying to do with limiting it to the number of schools.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That leads us to our next speaker.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamara. That leads us to Dr. Heiston. District achievement results. He might be able to, answer your question.
Yes.
Good evening, Chair Bartolotto, Superintendent Fujitaki, and board members. We had a chance to converse about the district achievement results at a recent retreat, but this will give us an opportunity to give a brief overview to the general public. These documents will be in the public domain and available to parents on our website, etc. And we just want to start out with, I suppose I should have the clicker here, with some non-cognitive areas. The district is working on a comprehensive set of indicators for school performance and individual student performance. And one thing that we noted in the data this year was that the percentage of students who were attending at least 95% of the days had decreased over the past 2 years. So you can see on this slide that elementary school, 2 years ago, we had 76.5% of the students attending at least 95% of the days. And if you were enrolled during a full school year, that would mean you could miss 8 days, but not 9. And so if for students that enrolled part of the year, we just take a proportion of that. And now middle school had the biggest decrease from 74% to 69%. High school, very little change from 62 to 60. But learning supports has kind of embraced this as one of the top priorities then for strategies to help. And you know, there are many fronts that you can work on engagement and attendance. One would be health concerns. Another would be kind of motivational kinds of factors. And the other would be, you know, really logistical kinds of, you know, alarm clocks and et cetera. So there are many things that we could do. And we know from the data that attendance is correlated with achievement. And so one of the slides that we showed you before shows that students have they not only have higher math scores with higher attendance, but they have higher math growth. So students learn more in math if they're there 95% of the time or more. So we see it across all the grade levels, and you can see for the total for the district, the percentage of students who made the national norm growth was about 50.5% for those that were attending less than 95% of days, and 55.5% for those attending 95% or more. So there was a significant impact. And when we break it down by different subgroups, you can see that American Indian students had the lowest attendance at 95%. Among the racial ethnic groups, Asian had the highest. You can see that EL, gifted and talented, girls actually attended a little bit less than boys. So, there are lots of fronts that we could work on this attendance problem. Now, I did report homeless, highly mobile students. It says homeless, but these are students who may be sleeping at different places during the week. They may be sometimes on a couch at a relative's house, or maybe even sleeping in a car. The definition of homeless, highly mobile for the federal law, the McKinney-Vento law, encourages social workers and other folks that are working with families to identify these students, make sure that we're getting services to them. And one of the areas for sure would be to get kids attending as much as possible. So we have work that we can do in this area. I'm not saying that this is a severe problem. It's not like we have a very high percentage of truant students, but for those students that aren't attending 95% of the day, we can have multiple fronts of effort. I know this is one of the areas that the diversity team is working on with a program that's called Check and Connect, where they work very closely, and one of the big criterion for identifying students for Check and Connect is lack of consistent attendance.
We don't have a male subgroup?
I just took female because it was higher. So I could have put in more data about, female was lower. So the males were actually attending at a higher rate than females. I'm not sure why that is, but it just came out that way. And next time I present, I can provide ELL and non-EL, special ed and non-special ed, so you have the counter group. That would make sense. Thank you for bringing that up. The next slide deals with the definition of continuously enrolled for the early childhood group. And we just heard Tamara say that we're moving to kind of a single model, but what we did for this year's vision metric and for reporting to the schools was to break out the percentage of students who were kindergarten ready on our new BEKA, I call it the BEKA. And the cut score for the BEKA predicts being reading well by third grade. So it turned out that all kinder prep students who then enrolled in the district in kindergarten, 61.3% of them were kindergarten ready, which predicts that they would be reading well by third grade. Somewhat less for free and reduced price lunch students, 59%, English learners, 51%, but special ed students, there are only 8 in the kinder prep program, but they were at 60.5%. So this is an indicator that we will continue to use for our 4-year-old program as we move forward. Then the next slides deal with the assessment that teachers use the most. It's called the MAP assessment, Measures of Academic Progress. And for this assessment, students take an adaptive test, and if students are already above the grade level standards, they're going to get challenging items on the test that are above grade level. If students are struggling, if they're in third grade, reading at a first grade level, they'll get first grade items. And the test is designed then to be very efficient in finding out the level of students' performance, and also then to be able to measure growth across time. So this type of assessment is the best type of assessment for measuring learning from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. This is the model that I think the ESSA committee is going to recommend for future state assessments, that they become more like the MAP test because it's so robust in being able to capture how much learning is taking place. It is also true that if you give an on-grade level test to a student that is well below grade level, they will give up or, become emotionally upset. And if you give a test that's too easy to kids that are way above grade level, they're just going to speed through the test and randomly guess. And you don't end up with good information on either of those extremes. And that's why teachers like this also, because their classroom data then can be compared to national norms in terms of growth. And they also get strengths and weaknesses on the strands that they don't get from the state test, so they can see if the team is producing more growth in one area of mathematics than another. For this particular slide, 54% of the students made national norm growth this past year in reading. That's down a little less than a point from last year, but it's still up almost 3 points from 2 years ago. What you'll see on these slides is that we had a large increase last year in the percentage of kids that were growing faster than the national norm, and now it backed off a little bit. And that'll be true for math too. When we break it out by subgroups, we can see that this was true for virtually all of the subgroups. Asian students actually did better than last year, but all the rest of the groups broken out by racial, ethnic, poverty, special ed had lower percents hitting their growth targets. And the vision metrics that we're sharing with the individual schools, and we'll aggregate up to the board presentation, are going to emphasize getting all of these subgroups up to 50% of the students hitting their growth targets. 50% would be national norm. Half the students make more than a year's growth and half make less. So if we can get all of our English language learners and students in poverty up to that level, we'll see the gaps decrease and we'll see higher overall performance for the district. When we look at different grade bands, this happens to be grades 6 through 8. We break these data out for the middle schools, just for their 6th through 8th students. For elementary, we do both grades 3 through 5, and also, we break out K through 3 and grades 4, 5 separately, so that they can see where the strengths and weaknesses are. For breakouts by language and racial ethnic category, we see that our Hispanic students that speak English as the primary language at home, the non-EL, actually had the best growth. They've gone up from 48 to 53 to 53 and a half. Also Asian non-EL is up from last year, a little bit up from 2 years ago. African American non-ELL students were down a little bit. African American EL students were down quite a bit. So we break it out this way so we don't confound language and racial ethnic, and we can get more fine-tuned analysis, not only at the district level, but at the individual school level as well. When we look at mathematics, we had a larger increase last year. We had a 9-point increase in the percentage of students hitting growth targets overall, which was very large. And in some grades, like grade 4, it was 15 points. It was difficult to discern exactly why things went up that high, but we see that it's come down a bit. We're still up 4 points from where we were 2 years ago, but we're down from last year's kind of all-time high. Grades 1 and 2 probably showed the greatest decreases there. We are working to identify which schools are producing the greatest growth, both in reading and math, so that we can replicate the kinds of strategies that schools are using across the district. We have similar breakout by racial, ethnic, and poverty, EL, special ed, and you can see that, for example, free and reduced lunch price students went from 50% to 57%, now back to 49%. So we're kind of challenging ourselves with those numbers less than 50. We really want to focus on making sure those students are making better gains this next year. Breaking out by grade band, here you can see the math broken out separately for grades 1 through 3 and 4 through 5. And for the free and reduced lunch and special needs students, there's a 49.4 for free and reduced price lunch in grades 4 or 5, and there's special education challenges in both the grade levels. Special education is unique because there are students that are mildly disabled, but they're also kind of in the same general category with students that are severely cognitively impaired. And many times parents want their students to take the MAP test because it is adaptive, it goes down to lower levels, but it is more difficult for those students that are cognitively impaired to make a year's growth in a year's period of time. So maybe 50 is too high a goal, I'm not sure, but at least we will in future reports break out the more severely cognitively impaired students, the students that are spending more than half of their day in special ed classrooms, from those students that are getting an hour of instruction a day, the resource level kids.
Excuse me, David.
Yes, please.
Can I ask
Dick.
just a quick
Yeah.
one on the last cell?
Mhm.
The free and reduced ELL and special ed, is it possible that we might have some kiddos that exist in all three?
It's an excellent point, Director Bergstrom. In all of these categories used for No Child Left Behind, and in the future for ESSA, there will be students that could be in all of the categories. And so you are counting double, sometimes triple individual students.
Does that do anything to your results?
We just have to make sure to remind everybody of that fact. I'm glad you did, because they aren't discrete categories. But the other way to do it would be to set up a priority, like, okay, if a student is special ed and EL, they'll only count in special ed. Or there's special ed and free and reduced lunch, and that kind of doesn't have a good logic to it. So I think students come in multiple shades and categories and languages, et cetera. We'll just have to probably live with that.
I just have a quick question as a parent of a student that spent the majority of his time in a special ed room.
Yes.
He would have been one that you're talking about,
Yeah,
trying
more
to take it.
severe, yeah.
But, I spent a significant amount of time advocating both at the federal and the state level to get him out of that test, and could not
Yeah.
get it. So is there more room under the new Every Child Succeeds Act for that, so that they don't have to take it? Because,
Yeah.
my attitude on that is I don't really need a test to tell me how far he is from his
Yeah.
peers. I'm very aware of it already.
The federal law currently requires a state test be given to all students. The more severely cognitively disabled students in Minnesota take an assessment called the MTAS, and for a large number of students, that's appropriate. But I do believe there are some students for which that
Right.
test
He-
isn't
he
even
took that
appropriate.
version.
And so currently, the feds do not allow not assessing at all.
That's what I thought.
But there's a caveat, parents can opt out now. And so the new federal law for ESSA says we want all students to take the assessments. schools and districts and the state will have consequences if we don't have 95% participation. But at the same time, we need to inform parents of the right to opt out of the test. The MAP test is highly encouraged for students that are in the mainstream curriculum, but we do not advocate the MAP test for students that are in an alternative curriculum working on other kinds of functional skills, unless parents want to give the assessment to see, reading and math skills. Excellent questions.
Thank you.
Moving forward, and I know it's getting to be a late evening, we have the same breakout by grade bands, and in the case of 6 through 8, we have all students at 49.4, free and reduced lunch at 43.8, EL at 48.3, and special ed at 49.4. So mathematics, we've seen some nice increases in mathematics over the past 2 years in middle school. We'd like to inch it up so that we're up over 50% with each one of these categories. And then we have the same breakout by English language learners and non-English language learners within each of the racial ethnic categories. Probably the biggest drop here is African American EL students dropped from 57% 2 years ago to 49.5. So we've got some challenges in math, and we are working with the new leadership and instruction to identify strategies for instruction as well as formative assessments that would be appropriate for monitoring progress throughout the year, so we don't wait till the end of the year to find out that a student is struggling. I'll skip over the QComp information. Well, I should briefly mention, we did not make our district QComp goal for reading. We had put in for a 3-point increase in the percentage of students making national norm growth in reading, and instead saw a 2-point decrease. The MCA data are fairly similar to the MAP data. These are proficiency levels, though. So this doesn't reflect the amount of learning, but it reflects comparing last year's students to the year before, what percent were proficient. We went from 59% 2 years ago to 61%. Now we're down to 60.5. So we had a slight decrease in reading. Yes, Rick.
So internally, will you then look and see if next year the sixth graders are at about 66%? Then, I mean, is that even a somewhat fair way of looking at it, saying, hey, well, last year, this is where we got, so we sort of expect it year to year?
In a district that doesn't have extreme mobility, you can follow these cohorts and say, okay, last year's fifth graders are now this year's sixth graders, and see whether we see declines that way. In schools that have high mobility, it doesn't work so well, because if 20% of your kids or 35% of your kids are new to the school, then it's really a different mix of beginning scores and factors like poverty. But we look both ways, and we talked about that when we went through these data with each school. We had a school team with all the leaders from each of the schools dialoguing, asking questions of their data, digging in, and that would be one thing that they could do, would be to say, well, last year these guys were lower, and now you see in this grade level they're lower again. And this is especially true when you're looking at proficiency. If you happen to graduate a very high class of fifth graders and your new class of third graders are coming in at a lower proficiency level, all of a sudden your whole school proficiency scores go down, but it probably has very little to do with instruction. It's just that you had a really high cohort that graduated and you had a new cohort that comes in with more challenges. So that's one of the caveats in analyzing proficiency data. When we break out the proficiency data by racial, ethnic, we can see that in reading, we saw a nice trend for African American in terms of increasing a point, almost a point. Still have a long ways to go in terms of proficiency. Hispanic students were about the same. Asian students up about 7 points from 2 years ago. That was a group that gained the most. White American students up about 3 points. But free and reduced lunch was down a little bit, and special ed was down a little bit. English language learners, interestingly, they didn't do as well in the MAP test, but they did have an overall increase on the MCA tests, which sometimes happens. For breaking out by EL and racial ethnic, we see that EL Hispanic students increased from 9 to 11 to 12.5. Hispanic non-EL students, however, decreased, which is the opposite trend from what we saw with the MAP. So these are proficiency data, and it could be a cohort effect. For special needs students, only 3.3% of special ed EL students were proficient, and that's a definition of EL and special ed. If you are proficient, then you get exited from those programs. So that's not too surprising. When I move to the mathematics, you'll see that we had a bigger drop, and cause for concern. We went from 61% of the population proficient 2 years ago to 60.7% last year to 57.2% this past year. And this is similar to the state overall decline in mathematics. And so, this is an area that our curriculum team is addressing. Breaking out by subgroups again, we see that the biggest drop was with EL students from 23% 2 years ago to 16% this past year. American Indian students showed an increase from 48 to 50%. And Hispanic students dropped 39 to 32%. When we break it out by EL within racial ethnic category, we see that non-EL as well as EL Hispanic students had lower proficiency rates. And Asian EL and non-EL had lower proficiency rates, and so did African American. So in each of those subgroups, we saw a decrease. Then switching gears, we have data from our multiple measures system on the MCA. This is like the map. It says whether you have low gain, medium gain, or high gain compared to the statewide averages and compared to the original norms. And this is the first time you've seen this. I think this is an easier way to look at the MMR data than the current system, but I'm biased because I was the one that came up with this idea originally when Minnesota had its first growth model. I thought simple was best, but we have a much more complicated system. But basically, if I can point with my red pointer, the state norms were 31% of the students were below average in terms of growth, 31% were high, and 38 in the middle. And that was defined by standard deviation units. But then you can see that the state, since those norms, actually has decreased the percentage in low gain and decreased in high gain with more students in the middle. Bloomington, on the other hand, has more students in high gain than in low gain, which is good. And compared to our fairly similar group of districts, only West St. Paul had high gain than we did in mathematics. There were other districts that had a higher low gain. We have districts we can talk to about the high gain, like West St. Paul. Over on the reading side, again, we had higher high gain than low gain, which is good. More of our kids are making growth in reading. It's a little less than the state norms that were set up 5 years ago. But we do have some districts we could talk about their growth: Inver Grove Heights, West St. Paul, Osseo. So this kind of comparison is the same kind of thing I do for each one of the schools. So I find comparative schools, 5 or 6 schools with similar demographics, and then they get a chance to see if they're top of the heap or if there are some other district or schools that they could talk to. And we'll see what kind of a growth system is voted in with the new ESSA. But I'm thinking simpler is better, more transparent. Parents can understand it better. So we'll see how that turns out. So questions, please.
Jim. So this bunch of charts and graphs was presented to ESSA?
No, I'm kind of mixing my presentation by saying that this kind of approach to growth is something that I have advocated for in the ESSA technical committee I'm on. I'm also on the assessment committee, and I think I'm going to advocate for an assessment that looks more like the map, that has more adaptive features, that's more designed to measure growth. The feds have certain things that they're saying that they want. I don't know, Minnesota may push back on some of those. Like only having a test with grade level items on it is what the current statute reads for No Child Left Behind. And the best way to measure growth is to give a test that's appropriate for every student. And so we're going to work on that. But they haven't seen this slide presentation, but when I do go around to different districts, I show how we emphasize growth as well as proficiency. Some districts are just concentrating on proficiency and may lose the fact that they have high-need schools with high poverty, high percentage EL students that might be doing very well, that you would miss if you're not looking at growth as well as proficiency. And you may find a school that's very high on overall proficiency, but their growth is stagnant. And so both schools would need to, to improve. So I think we try to have a balance in our data that provides both pictures. And then the other aspect is this non-cognitive area. And I'm also on a third committee which is dealing with coming up with an indicator for social emotional or other type of school quality indicator in addition to cognitive. And so if I'm not around as much, when you show up in my office and I'm not there, I'm probably at one of those state meetings.
Well, between you and Mr. Kubas, I'm sure the whole non-cognitive thing is
well, Mr. Kubas is the guru for
it's going to be significant.
this.
But I guess my question was the fact that you've done so much and been involved so much that the state has to recognize your expertise and picking up on some of these things and you're sharing with other districts and gathering other information from other districts has to be a plus for us in terms of leadership, preparing and presenting this information.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think we have had a really solid foundation. My predecessor, Jim Engemeyer, put together a data system that was incomparable. And to be able to do the kinds of analyses, you have to have really good foundation. And so he deserves a lot of credit.
Good.
Other questions?
Just quickly, David, you don't have to go back to the slide. It was the first one about 95% of possible days. Do we have any way of knowing that if somebody, say for instance, gets strep throat and they're out 6 days, a big chunk?
Yeah, we do have illness information, reasons for absences. It's very difficult to ask the computer to tell you how many consecutive days of types of absences. I'm hoping with the new system, with the campus system, we're going to have more flexibility in both the attendance reporting and in the social behavior reporting. So, because you want to be able to have red flags come up with those kinds of things. If you have a students that have been out for so many days, the computer should be able to remind the principal when they turn on their computer. So eventually, I think we're going to have these dashboard kinds of indicators that can do that. And right now, it'd be difficult for me to do that.
Okay. And then one other slide was it dealt with homeless students. Do we know, do we have a number? And I know that number fluctuates, but do we have a semi-accurate number of how many we currently have?
Last year, if I go to that slide, what am I doing?
And Dr. Heisted, I can provide you with some support as well. We look after those.
129.
Yeah, I had 129 last year that were in the official MARS data, and that would be an October 1 count. So that's a lot of students, 129 students that don't have stable housing. And you can see the impact on the attendance.
Chair Bartolotta?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please.
We're upwards now of 160 currently. That's a fluctuating number for all the reasons that you can imagine. But Suzanne Pahulu looks after that work in the Learning Supports Department. She does a very, very good job of educating schools and educators about what to look for students who may be homeless or highly mobile. So, and to her credit, she received a significant grant that was written to help with the discovery and then the support for our homeless families in the community. So I'd be happy to talk more about that at a different meeting if that would be considered. Excellent.
Great, Andy. I know that these kiddos try really, really, really hard not to be noticed. They don't want you to know that they're homeless, and it's they bring a whole set, a unique set of needs and wants over and above, those that have a stable home. So it's a conversation we need to continue.
Anyone else? Hearing none, thank you for your report. We appreciate it.
Wow.
It brings us to board member reports. Go ahead, please.
I meant to say this earlier when we had the crowd here, and I didn't say it, so I'm hoping they're either still listening or the handful of people that are here will pass the word on. But I appreciate the energy in the room, but I really hope that we can have teachers, parents, and the community organize and work to advocate for the schools here in Bloomington so that we're not left in this position. So I appreciate the energy. I hope that we can turn it to positive and do great things for schools. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I don't have anything to report from this past week, but I do you probably already heard, but just want you to be aware that I'm tired now. That legislative committee will be meeting this Friday, so we'll be talking about, what our possible priorities would be for this year, and important to hear from other people that might have other opinions or ideas about, what do we keep advocating for.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, this one, it's medium length tonight. So I was fortunate to attend the new staff welcome. I refer to it as a freshman seminar. It happens in this room when the new staff comes in. We have an opportunity to come in. It's a morning presentation. We have an opportunity to come in and meet them, to ask them where they're from, just to get to know them a little bit and welcome them to our Bloomington school community. So that is an event that I look forward to each and every year. I had an opportunity and was fortunate to be able to attend the Transportation Center Awards, was over at Olson Middle. And it's just a treat to see so many of our transportation folks, the energy and the effort that they put into driving their bus. It's fun to see how they own that bus. You know, nothing gets past them. There's protocol, and the kids all know it, and they for the most part, they love their bus drivers. Just a quick plug: remember to watch out for those stop arms. Make sure that you stop until they're fully retracted. But that's a neat thing to attend, to see the folks that make that happen pretty much behind the scenes. So you don't ever hear their names. So I drew the short straw this year and met with the auditor. Each year the auditors come through and they choose one of the board members to come and sit in the room, and they strap you up to a lie detector and make sure that you tell the truth and nothing but the truth. So that's always an interesting conversation. But that is part of one of the many things that the board does. Attended the back-to-school celebration at Kennedy. It was a lot of fun to see folks there, to have an opportunity to sit and listen and learn. And that's how I learn. I'll ask a question and I'll sit back and listen and learn. And that particular venue provides that opportunity. Let's see, I attended the all-staff welcome back for Intermediate 917. I sit on that board as well. That was at the Rosemont Community Center. And that was very well attended. A lot of people doing some really fun things. So if you don't know what Intermediate 917 is, send me an email. I'll do the best I can to fill you in. Or you can look us up on their website, and you'll see my face as one of the board members. I encourage you to ask more questions if you don't know. If I don't know the answer, I'll get it for you. I went to attended an awards ceremony, and I'm going to shine some light on Deb Bunkholt sitting over my right shoulder here. She got a service award plaque for 45 years. And Deb is my, she keeps track of me. I'll just say that, Mom. She helps me understand where I need to be and where I can go, what those opportunities are, and I know that I'd be lost without her.
Times that by 7, please.
Exactly. 917 had a board meeting. We continue to look for there's 917 is primarily special ed, setting 4 and up, and we occasionally have troubles finding specialized teachers for some positions. So we're looking for a specialized position there. We had some good conversation about that. Had an opportunity to stop into Oak Grove Elementary just last Friday. Spent time on campus just witnessing, as I mentioned earlier, the magic that happens in these schools. It's just amazing, just to watch and see what happens. Had a chance to talk to the custodial staff, of course, talk to the front office staff, talk to the teachers, sat and had lunch with them, or actually I watched them eat. Well, I forgot to bring my lunch. And one last quick reminder, those of us that had the BPS app that was available on the App Store, the district is phasing that out, and there is there's a BPS, I'm going to look it up here, so pardon me for doing this. It's a BPS hub app, so you can access all your students' information through the hub. I'm hoping that there'll be a link to that for those that are not, like I was, not getting access through the app. But I just wanted to give just a quick reminder to those who, unless I'm the last one, are having issues trying to access their students' data through the hub or through the app. You can find it through the hub, and I'm sure that Katrina and Danny and the rest in the tech center be more than happy to field your questions and calls. So that's what I have tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone?
Just wanted to mention, thank you to everybody that came to the back-to-school celebration. I think you forgot to mention that one.
Sorry.
So I will bring it up on his behalf. And Mr. Tom Ringdahl was our MC, did a wonderful job, so it was nice to see everybody. Also, the back-to-school celebration at the schools were, we went to, I went to Ridgeview and to Olson, and so it was fun walking back to Olson, trying to remember what back-to-school night was like for me, how many years ago it was. So, yep, thank you to everybody for participating in those and having them go off nicely.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you to Tom for that wonderful anniversary video that he made too. That was really wonderful that we saw at the back to school morning.
Yeah, I wonder if he's still in the room down there
I'm sure
checking
he
things
is.
out.
I just want to mention that the Heritage Days Parade is on Saturday morning, and I have no idea what time we're supposed to gather. Is it 10 a.m. or 10?
Yeah, so it depends on who you're walking with.
What school?
You need
Yeah.
to-
We're all kind of early on. In
Yeah, so then, we need to be there 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah. And they did, Jim did send out a note saying, don't come too early.
Okay.
Okay.
You don't have to get up at 3 o'clock if you were planning.
It's in the same area that we've always gathered?
No, the staging area, so it'll go down, the parade goes down 102nd, and then it's going to stage,
Well, it's still on 3rd Street by Kennedy, where you
Yeah,
go
That's
over
what I'm saying.
It's
you-
pretty much
Yeah,
that
okay.
same
I
way.
I think it's the
They're
opposite
gonna
way
go
though.
south.
It's
Yeah,
going to
so
go
you go-
south
you
instead
go
of north.
south,
Instead of
yeah,
north of
staging.
98, it's going to go south.
Yeah.
It'll be on the other side of the street. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hope to see you all there. The other thing I want to mention is the MSBA Advocacy Tour meeting is here Wednesday night. I believe it starts at 5:30. Be there, be square. I'll turn over to the superintendent.
A few more things about the Heritage Days celebration. It's this Friday, starts Friday, Saturday, 16th, 17th. The Grand Marshal of the Parade is Alice Seagren, former school board member, representative, and former Commissioner of Education. And this year's theme for the festival and the parade is the School District Centennial Celebration. I'll recognize and thank the Mayor, Winstead, for joining me in greeting students and parents at Washburn Elementary School. And finally, we have a joint meeting scheduled with, the school board has a joint meeting scheduled with the city's council for November 29th at the Civic Plaza. This will be the 5th joint meeting in, I believe, 2 years. The administration requests a motion to establish this meeting.
Second.
Second?
All in favor of establishing the joint meeting with the city council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. There you go.
Concludes my report.
Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the board this evening? Hearing none, this meeting's adjourned.
Do we have to announce we're going back into our other?
Yes, now we go back.